According to the INTG Home Inspection Standards of Practice, the home inspector shall inspect the foundation, the basement, crawl space, and structural components. The inspector also shall describe the type of foundation and the location of the access to the underfloor space. The home inspector shall report as in need of correction, observed indications of wood in contact with or near soil, observed indications of active water penetration, observed indications of possible foundation movement, observed cutting, notching, and boring of framing members that may, in the inspector's opinion, present a structural or safety concern.
Okay, now we're going to start our section 3.3, which is going to be the basement, the structure, crawl space, and we're actually in the unfinished part of the basement right now. I'm going to take a reference photo of this room just for my own reference. And so I'm going to start over here in the corner. First thing I want to do is just check this entry door. And I just want to check my reveals, see if I have any movement here, both sides, see if it latches, that all works good. Now I'm going to start moving along this concrete wall. And I've got some expansion material there along the base. That's what I want to see. The concrete floor here is independent of the structure. We've got some expansion joints cut in here for future movement. And we've got over here on the opposite wall, this is called a floating wall system. And it's got this gap at the bottom right here. It's got a base plate and then a plate on the bottom of the top wall. This allows for future movement of the floor. Because here in Colorado, we do have some expansive soils. You may not in your area, but here we do. And so this is an accommodation for that, any potential movement. So we're going to continue on with our wall inspection here. We're looking for cracks, any seepage that may be coming in. You can see down here at the bottom, we've got some efflorescence. It's in this corner here, which my first suspicion would be that maybe we've got a gutter leak or something outside that may be seeping in through here. So we want to get that taken care of and looked at. Just keep moving along here, looking for cracks. Coming along this wall here. We got some shelving here that's going to block our view a little bit, but we're still going to take a look. It's important to look at the base as well, because we may have more efflorescence back there. We do have one crack here. It's a hairline crack. It's vertical. This can be from curing concrete from the initial pour. Usually these are not considered a huge structural issue. Typically, if I see horizontal cracking, those really are a signature of some structural issues. So just keep on moving down. Everything looks pretty good. I don't see any additional efflorescence along this wall. Up here we've got TGAI floor joists with OSB sheathing, floor sheathing, or floor decking. I'm going to go ahead and check this knee wall over here too for any cracks. Look along the plumbing base here, see if we have any cracking there. One thing I've noticed here is that we've got a vertical steel support where the fins have not been bent over the beam, the steel beam, to lock this into place. So we want to get that addressed. We're going to move over here and take a photo of our efflorescence. Going to look at our framing here on our stairwell as well. See what we've got here. We got some steel strapping holding on the floor joists here. Everything looks pretty secure here.
One additional thing we might point out here is that sole plate on the bottom is pressure treated lumber, which is required sitting on the concrete. So this is very good.
Now we're going to move on to the crawl space. This foundation here is a combination of crawl space and basement. We have a very small crawl space here. So I'm going to stick my head in here real quick and take a couple of reference photos. A couple things I've noticed, I've got some loose insulation on this back wall. And I've got I've got a spot here where I'm seeing some vegetation, which could mean the potential of some moisture that may have seeped into the crawl space. So I may make a note of that as well. Now, one thing I'm gonna ask Lon about is, should there be a heat duct in here?
No. Keep in mind, we're so open up here and stuff, we don't even have this crawl space sealed off from the rest of the house. So I don't, we have insulated walls.
Right.
But you might point out that the insulation on the walls is important to keep the crawl space from getting too cold, particularly here in Colorado where we can get some pretty chilly nights.
So as Lon pointed out, that this insulation in the crawl space walls is very important to keep the crawl space at a consistent temperature, because we do have plumbing in here and it gets very cold in Colorado. So cold areas, you really want to get that secured. The other thing I've noticed here is we've got a tarp over the top of a loose vapor barrier. And what we want to see now is probably a sealed vapor barrier to hold out any additional moisture that can penetrate through the crawl space into the upper level. So we're probably going to make a note of that in our report, make a recommendation for a sealed vapor barrier. I'd like to add one more thing about the sealed vapor barrier, helping hold out any potential mold that might be created from additional moisture. And out in the out part of or by the entryway here, all of these areas are open between the basement itself and the crawl space. And it may be advisable to seal this off so you don't have any of that moist air, that stale air that normally comes from a crawl space.
With the crawl space, one thing I would just point out as information is our steel column here is sitting on a pier that's isolated from the slab, the floating slab. And so this pier should go down to bedrock or to some support. We can't tell that, so we just looking at what we can see. But we isolate the pier from the slab, so if that slab does move around, which it's designed to do, it won't affect the load-bearing column here in the house. So this is like we like to see it here, frankly.
Okay, so we're done with the unfinished portion of the basement and the structure, at least what we can see. In here, this is the finished portion of the basement, and there's not a lot we can really view in terms of the foundation walls or the flooring. However, I like to walk the perimeter of these rooms in the finished area to see if I could feel any unevenness in the floor, which might give us a heads up that we may have some heaving in the floor. So I'm just going to kind of walk around here. And I'm feeling a high point right in here. And actually I feel quite a bit of height or heaving here. And I can actually see over there, if you look at the baseboard, you can actually see the hump, a high point where the carpet goes up against the baseboard. But these are subtle signs that you can use, you know, when you're trying to get kind of gauge what's going on underneath the carpeting. But I'm going to go ahead and walk into this room as well. And I'm feeling this hump in the floor is pretty predominant right through here. And it drops off pretty good here on both sides, probably about at least 3/4 to an inch maybe, which is indicating to me that we've had some movement in the slab here between these two rooms. But how you could address this in your report, you could just put in there that you noticed it, but you don't know what the cause is. Potentially it could be from some potential heaving, and because you can't see it clearly, you don't know if there's any cracking or anything like that underneath the carpet. This concludes section 3.3 of the SOP, which is the crawl space basement.